And I thought, you know what? I've already deconstructed my entire faith system. Let's not stop there. Let's deconstruct this. And so I started deconstructing monogamy and realized that that was a message that had been informed by my religion. It was a message that had been informed by my culture. Yet when looking for any substantial reason as to why that was the way to go, I came up with nothing. There was nothing. But the position that I took on it is that if that's what happens, I'm okay with it because that's what needs to happen. Like, why would I be afraid to open a door if it leads to something that is better for both of us, even if we don't go through the same door together?
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 148. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a really fun, amazing, badass interview with Marie.
Yeah, this is, again, I know we say this often, but this one is...
like every episode.
But this is a super, super powerful interview. Marie is seriously a badass. She is the host of a podcast called Everyone's Autonomous.
Yep.
It focuses primarily on talking to people who have come out of deeply religious backgrounds and sort of found the light.
Yes.
So to speak. I made that up, not her wording.
Yeah, people who are trying to heal through that.
Yeah, but it's not specific to that. So, I mean, it is amazing work she's doing. She also does coaching for people in non-monogamous relationships and quite a few other things you can check out over at her website, and we will put links to all of that in the show notes.
Which you can find at our website, normalizingmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast button.
That was very fast, but people can slow it down to get all that. One thing I did want to say about this, just to highlight how incredible this is, as I edit these and listen to them, I pull out little clips, audio clips to use at the beginning and to use on social media.
Yeah, and we put them in little graphics and stuff.
And Emma listens to them before bed, like
I do.
Like we put them on a white noise generator, but this one had 30 of them that I pulled out.
Like so many good tidbits.
It was hard to choose. So I don't know which one I've picked yet for the beginning, but I might have picked 2.
Yeah, and there'll be more on social media because why not? We have to get this out there.
Okay, enough rambling about how awesome Marie is. Please stick around and listen to the interview. Be amazed. And before we jump into it, we've got a couple of quick announcements. We're going to keep them super quick this week about the community.
Yes. So we're just going to say the dates for upcoming events for our community. More information will be talked about in the outro, so stick around for that. Our next virtual meet and greet is going to be October 16th. That's a Friday. These meet and greets are open to everyone. They're $10. So
more details in the outro. Yes. No more talking about it. Next thing.
So that's separate from Patreon. Patreon, we have our next women's group call. That's the 14th of October. And our next Patreon Q&A, the 28th of October. Again, more information in the outro, or you can go to our website to find out more.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Super fast.
Super fast.
All right. The other thing we wanted to mention, not a paid sponsor by any way, shape, or form.
But just a fun little announcement that we wanted to make.
Is if you're looking for ways to keep busy during this quarantine, check out the Hump Film Fest. It's all online now. If you haven't been, we've been to it in person and we've been to it virtually. Both are good experiences.
And just to be clear, this is Dan Savage's Hump Film Fest. It is porn, but
it's amateur porn.
It's amateur porn, and it's super fun, and just you see all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's amazing.
Anyway, it'll blow your mind. The last weekend to see this season is this coming weekend, October 10th. So into the show notes you go. You'll find links to everything to get there, and also coming up in November, they're doing a greatest hits sort of series. So that'll, if you miss it, you didn't miss it for good.
Yeah, in November, they'll do Greatest Hits Volume 2, so go check that out.
Just thought we'd throw that out there. We'd love to support other people doing amazing stuff, and
give you some fun pastimes.
Yeah, something to go masturbate to.
Or just enjoy. Hang out with friends via Zoom.
It's not required to masturbate. That was just an optional add-on.
Yes. Okay. Then next up, we want to do a quick thank you to the sponsor of our show, Alt Playground. And just a quick reminder that there are lots of other podcasters on their platform, and they have a lot of different communities as well.
And if you don't know what Alt Playground is, because Emma forgot to tell you, it is an online dating site for non-monogamous and open-minded people. We are on there, as well as lots of other amazing people. They're constantly...
And podcasters, like I said.
Yep, you nailed that part. And they're constantly growing, acquiring other platforms, and really doing their part to be inclusive. They've got 9 different gender identities when you sign up.
9 relationship statuses, 8 relationship types, 13 sexual orientations. I just took over what you were saying.
Yep, and the point is it's inclusive, and we urge you to go check it out. Links are in the show notes at normalizingnonmonogamy.com, or you can head straight to altplayground.net and sign up there. We don't have any discount codes or anything at the moment, so go check it out and let us know what you think.
And again, you can find everything over at our website. I'll say it slower this time, normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Slower and quieter. So now you have,
not quieter.
Now you have a new handicap to figure out how to overcome.
You just like giving me a hard time.
And while you're at our website, we would recommend you head over to the Contact Us page and send us a voicemail. We got a voicemail last week.
Woohoo! One of our first ones in a while.
I'm not going to say what this person got, but they got some free sweet swag.
They did.
Virtual swag.
Virtual. I was like, we didn't send them anything in the mail, but they got virtual swag.
They got virtual swagged. And maybe you'll even see them at the next virtual meet and greet, because that might have been part of their swag.
Why are you just giving away everything?
Anyway, we'd love to hear from everybody. And if you're interested in sharing your story on the show, you don't have to have your own podcast like Marie or be as much of a badass as Marie. You can just be your own normal badass self. And we'd love to hear your story as well. And now we're going to jump into the episode. One thing, we've talked about this the last couple weeks. Start laughing now. We start laughing right at the beginning.
Seems to be an ongoing trend.
So you can be one of the gang and party on.
Yeah. Let's go. Talk to Marie. Oh, boy.
That's perfect. All right. Well, too many giggles. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Marie Works. Excited to have you. We've been laughing our butts off here. So we know a little bit about you from your email and your bio, but we love to have our guests introduce themselves. So really it takes the pressure off us. We don't mess up, and you get to say and brag about yourself. So welcome. Please take it away.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, even though I emailed you randomly and admitted before recording that I've never heard the show before. So I appreciate your grace and your generosity in sharing this platform with me. So yes, I'd love to introduce myself. Thanks. And so my name is Marie Delafont, and I am a life coach for people who are exploring ethical non-monogamy. My information is on Marie D as in dog, elephant.com. And I got into this work like probably about a year ago, and I've been poly for about 3 years. And it's been a hell of a ride and something I never dreamed that I would ever be doing. And it's great. I don't know what else you want me to I could tell you so much more, but I don't know if you want me to dive in yet.
Yeah, well, we can dive in. I mean, we know a little bit about your background, in that you were raised very religious, and that is sort of the foundation for how you got to where you are. So maybe, are you willing to take us back there, and then how were you able to start exploring non-monogamy, a couple of years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So right now I'm 38, and I was born in Minnesota. So Midwestern, if you know anything about that culture, it's, Scandinavian, passive aggressive, fake nice. Minnesota nice is actually pretty like mean when you think about it. But I grew up in that culture. My family was Lutheran. My dad was Catholic when he grew up, but he kind of became more charismatic. My family was very much about having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and needing to believe that he died on the cross for your sins, that you were born sinful, and only by thinking the right thing in your head, which is that he did die for you and then he resurrected, could you then go to heaven? And if you did not, then you would go to a place dedicated to people who didn't think the right thing, which would be comprised of entire, endless torture. So this was the all-loving God that I was raised in. My family unit itself wasn't terribly like fire and brimstone, but it got involved in churches that were a Minnesota type of fire and brimstone. It was like, hey, don't you want to go to heaven? Like it would really be bad to go to hell. It wouldn't be so much fun. Like instead of the really heavy handed preachers, that are constantly talking about the lake of fire. But, point being, grew up in evangelical Christianity. My parents were, emotionally invested in it. It wasn't nominal. It wasn't cultural. It was personal for them. They were raised that way. They have never really doubted it or anything. I drank the Kool-Aid. I never really thought twice about it until I was probably about 13 and I started doubting. But the flavor of Christianity that I grew up in was the kind that told you that you couldn't trust yourself, that you are a dirty, sinful being, not just physically, not just carnally or sexually, but just your thoughts and everything about you, all of your intentions are filthy because you're this filthy human being. It's that original sin idea. They took that very seriously. And so that's what I learned about myself. I learned that I couldn't trust myself. I learned that everything about me was disgusting unless I was forgiven by God. Then anything that was good about me was only because God was living in me. I'm doing little quotation marks. So that's the kind of Christianity that I grew up in. Nowadays, I am aware that there are friendlier versions, and those are not the versions that I'm talking about, but that's the one that I was in. So around the age of 13, a lot of us start thinking a little bit more critically, and a lot of us have stories about the things that we questioned when we were 13. And at 13, that's when I started questioning my faith. And like I said, I was kind of sabotaged cognitively in that I didn't feel like I could trust the doubts that I had about my faith. I didn't feel like I could trust myself. I felt like any of the questions that I had were just a sign that the devil was tempting me or trying to make me stray, or was a sign that I had some kind of secret sin that was keeping me away from God, as if like water separates from oil. It was just almost like a physics thing that I just I couldn't connect to God. I couldn't make sense of this belief system because of it. And so I didn't really follow those doubts. I tried to, but I kind of wavered back and forth. And so from the age of 13 until I graduated high school, it was basically just like pure trauma 24/7, because I had to keep going to church twice a week. And I would tell my friends about my faith crisis, and they would treat me as if I was diagnosed with cancer and that they had the cure, but I was refusing their cure. And so it was this very dramatic, heightened, sensationalized scenario for a teenager who's already dealing with their own internal growth and changes that we all went through that was very difficult in and of itself. But now I'm internalizing my growth as like this sinful thing, and my desire to be a critical thinker as a sinful thing. So I experienced a lot of time really fighting with that, and constantly being gaslit by the people around me and being gaslit by my own cognition. In addition to that, in the mid-90s, it was very trendy in the Christian culture that I was a part of to vow off dating, to to commit to not have sex with anyone until you were married, and anyone means the opposite sex because heteronormativity, and binary gender, of course. So there was, I'm reading books from Joshua Harris, entitled, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I had some friends that I looked up to who waited to kiss until they got married. And I was like, whoa. And so they had us sign little pieces of paper that had us commit our virginity to our future husband. And I signed that twice because why not? And I liked it. Actually, I kind of liked that because I was very insecure and really internalized a lot of that original sin stuff and just didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And so this was kind of like an excuse to not have to talk to boys and to just let God hook me up when the time was right. But in the long run, it sexually, what's the word? Repressed, oppressed, whatever that word is, me. I never learned how to talk to people who I was interested in. I never learned to articulate my sexual feelings. I was never okay with masturbating. And if I did, afterwards, I would want to throw up because I felt so much shame. I had a boyfriend in my junior year of high school, and I had the opportunity to kiss him, and I said no because I was just so like backwards on that whole thing because of the way that I was raised.
Right. Did you have any like friends or people around you that were showing you like that you didn't have to do it that way, or was pretty much your whole friend network like you were all signing your virginity cards together, like assembly line style?
Yep. No, the latter. Definitely the latter. It was. I am aware after the fact that the Bible camp that I attended so much throughout my high school, people were fucking in the woods. And I didn't know about it. Even like homosexual fucking in the woods was happening at this Bible camp where you had to fill out an essay form that required you to condemn homosexuality as a lifestyle. So I find it humorous now to be informed that was happening, and I was informed that I was a prude. So back then people knew that I was a prude. So I think I was a little bit more prudish than probably my peers were. And then my peers, they received all the messages. What I've been learning is that they received the same messages that I did. They also agreed with those messages, but they let their body guide them. So they did the things that they wanted to do with their body and then hated themselves afterwards. Whereas I only did like a few of the things, and I've been really good at telling my body no, which is not great. But that was kind of the trend. But no, otherwise, I was surrounded by people who supported these belief systems, or at least pretended to on the outside, or at least didn't disclose to me any deviancies from that because they knew that I took it very seriously. So yeah, I only had one boyfriend in high school, and he, most of that was long distance because he was in Mexico. And then I never even kissed him. So, when I graduated from high school, I asked myself what I wanted to do next. And I decided that I was too dumb to go to college. And I decided that my faith crisis was just so insane that I really needed to double down and like recommit myself to God. And so I moved to Mexico, and I became a Christian missionary full time for 2 years, converting Catholics to Protestantism. That's weird. But that's what I did. And that was a crazy school. It was extremely charismatic, like talking in tongues, slaying of the Holy Spirit, like way over the top, crazier indoctrination than I'd ever experienced before. So it was very difficult. And half the time I was an atheist when I was there. Because I was having yet another faith crisis because cognitive dissonance doesn't go away. Eventually I left, to keep that whole story very short, because that's less relevant to the listeners at large. But I eventually left because in my heart of hearts, a lot of the reason I was doing some of that missionary work was because there's a boy that I liked. and his name is Javier, and I don't give a fuck if he ever hears this. But he was a large reason why I went to, a lot of the mission stuff that I did. And then he ended up dating someone. And so I was like, well, fuck this. God doesn't want me here. So I was like, okay, I guess God doesn't want me here. And so I left and I went home, and then I've been depressed ever since. That's partially true. The last few years have been better. But at that point in 2003, when I left missions, I began a gradual departure from my faith, with no more roller coasters. It was pretty much downhill all the way. I married the first guy that I fucked after that point. And when was that? Well, let's see. I left missions in March of 2003. I met this guy in July of 2003, then married him the following March of 2004. So
was it we have to get married so we can have sex, or was it we had sex so we have to get married?
No, my internalization of doctrine started disintegrating. And while I still believed in God, I felt like, you know what? I don't really feel like following these particular rules. I don't know. I didn't have a ton of dissonance around it. I just did it. I think because I was just so disillusioned, and I think I was in a very traumatic space in my head, that I was just doing things just to hurt myself just because I wanted to. And so I took up with this guy, and since he lived in India, like he was visiting for like a couple of months while we were getting trained for our job. And so he had to go back to India, and I was like, well, this is a really cool thing that we've got going on. And since I'm unlovable and a disgusting, horrible person, and no one would ever want me, and I'm broken and I can't even understand my own faith, I should marry this guy because he's the only one that loves me. So he returned to India, and we decided we didn't want a divorce in the future, but we were pretty sure this would work out. So I flew to India in March, and we got married in India. And then I had him get a green card, and he came back to the US, and we were together for 5 years, and it was pretty dysfunctional and not healthy, and bad boundaries, bad communication, bad, all bad. That's a pretty good way to summarize that. Probably not abusive, mostly not abusive, but just not good. I divorced him in 2009. Oh, by the way, our sex was terrible. I divorced him.
and probably not a whole lot of non-monogamy there. No. I remember the time that I discovered porn on his computer, and I was devastated because that meant something to me back then. And now I'm just like, if I find some porn I like, I'll send it to my partner, be like, hey, bookmark this. You might like it. Like, I don't care. Or I'll ask my partner, like, hey, if you ever need to like jack off, like, just let me know. I'll hang out downstairs. Like, like giving him space to spend time with himself, acknowledging that he's going to do that on his own anyway. So, but yeah, back then, no. In fact, the first orgasm I ever had was accidental. It just kind of happened because the dick was rubbing just the right way for just long enough that it happened. And I said to myself in that moment, I was like, oh, that's an orgasm. Okay. But then I never had another one with him, I don't think. That was never the point. It was always about his dick. We never talked about sex ever. Like, it was just like, he wants sex, and I didn't want it because he drove me crazy. And then he didn't want it because I developed an eating disorder and gained a bunch of weight. And so it was just not good. And even the first time we had sex wasn't fully, when I say sex, I mean PIV, penis and vagina. It wasn't fully consensual. It wasn't articulated that that was what I wanted to do. So a line was kind of crossed with poor communication. And a lot of the relationship was kind of like that, just a blur of boundaries. A lot of, I've always struggled with feeling very, like I had to be very performative for sex. And I think our culture has reinforced that, especially for people who are raised as women in this culture. And so that was something I definitely expressed during our time together. So we were both very unhealthy together. Eventually we divorced, and
Oh boy. And then I started dating. I dated one guy. I went on one date. I didn't like him. So I went on a date with this other guy, and then I fucked around with him for like 3 months and had a lot of fun, found out what orgasms are and how to get them, fell in love with him, but he wasn't in love with me. So that broke off. But then just 3 months later, I started dating this guy who I then married. And so then that was the guy that I was with. So like, it's this serial monogamy, this like compulsive marrying thing. Like this like, I don't want to like date around. I don't want to have to take these risks. I need to lock these people down because I'm unlovable bullshit. Mm-hmm. So that brings me a little bit closer to how I ended up being in non-monogamy. So the partner I'm with, his name is Keith, and he, for us, like the first few years, our sexual life was really cool. Like it was pretty fun. I had a good time. But the thing about finding someone who really loves you and accepts you and doesn't try to force you down one path or the other or try to make you be someone is that you start to feel safe. And when you start to feel safe, at least for me, I was able to notice the fears and trauma come up to the surface. And so I was really disoriented when all of a sudden, a couple years into our marriage, if he would, solicit me, quote, in quotations, try to instigate sex or something, I started curling up in the fetal position on the bed, my back to him, and just would start like staring at the wall, like comatose, like unresponsive, until finally, like, I thought I was going to like throw up. And so I'd have to stand up, leave the bedroom. I'd go to the kitchen. I would just like grab onto the countertop and just like heave and just start like wailing as if my infant had just died. Like it was this huge reaction. And it was a really, really scary time for me because not only was I having this experience, but I was also afraid of what that meant for me and my partner because I had found so much safety and stability with him and love and acceptance. And now I couldn't quote unquote make myself have sex with him. And so I was like, is he going to leave me? Can he deal with being celibate for the rest of my life, his life? Because I have an issue and I don't know what that issue is, but I'm guessing it has to do with purity culture. And
everything you had been stuffing down for years and years and years was coming to the surface. Exactly. And so I tried to work on it within the context of our marriage. Like I went to a fucking doctor, like a literal fucking doctor. Like they did this thing where they like put this little machine on your clit and they like check different responses and stuff. And they like test your blood and just to see if there's anything biologically happening in regards to your drive. There was nothing to be determined there. There was nothing standing out there. I started seeing a sex therapist within the clinic network, found that very frustrating. And I would regularly go into kind of a trauma response when talking to them. So I wasn't really getting anywhere there. I was just hitting my head against the wall and feeling so much shame, so much shame. And like guilty for what this might make my partner feel about him. And like that, do I love him? Is he attractive to me? Does, like, what does this mean about him? And I don't want him to feel that way. So it was a really tumultuous time. And that carried on for a number of years until about, late 2006. When I met this guy, he's just a friend, but he's adorable. He's very good looking. And we just like got on a phone call one day because we were hanging out a bunch and like we just talked for 3 hours. And at the end of that call, I'm thinking to myself, I would love to fuck him. Where's this coming from? And I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And that got me thinking about like, if I've left the faith that I've come from, that says that monogamy is the only way to go, why am I still holding on to this value of monogamy? Why is that there? And I thought, you know what? I've already deconstructed my entire faith system. Let's not stop there. Let's deconstruct this. And so I started deconstructing monogamy.
and realized that that was a message that had been informed by my religion. It was a message that had been informed by my culture. Yet when looking for any substantial reason as to why that was the way to go, I came up with nothing. There was nothing. So I brought it up to my partner, and in true Marie fashion, whenever I approached something big and scary, I bought 3 books on the topic, devoured them in a matter of 2 weeks, and said to myself, yep, I think I need to explore non-monogamy. I read more than 2, Ethical Slut, and then one other one I can't remember. And that just blew my mind open. And so at the beginning of 2007, my marital partner, my romantically contractual partner, and I opened up our marriage.
2007 or 2017?
Thank you. 2017.
Yeah, you said all the time. Early, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
I appreciate you catching that. Yeah, I get all those decades really mixed up.
It's all good. So
thank you.
3-4 years ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to clarify, just to maybe not to interrupt where you're going with it, but so you and your partner Keith, you've been married for quite a few 10 years at this point. And that now,
as of today, 10 years, yeah.
As of 10 years, right. But like overall, that marriage, that relationship, there wasn't anything quote unquote wrong with it, right? That was the sort of the crux or the difficult piece for you.
Yeah.
You were happy, you were enjoying things, and then you sort of hit this point where you felt safe, and then everything boiled up and came out of nowhere. And it wasn't like there was abuse, there was communication, everything was good, and then it just like a wall hit.
Yeah. Yeah, we were one of those couples that people always kind of looked up to. Like, we didn't really fight. We always talked things through. And I took pride in that identification and that value that people placed on me. Whether I feel good about that or not is a different thing. But I did. I felt good about that. And so yeah, that you hit it on the head. That's why it was so disturbing. Because everything else felt really, really good about this relationship. So I was really excited when I asked him about this. I was really scared to bring it up because, one day I'm saying to him, I don't want to have sex. I think I might be asexual. The next day I'm saying, I would like to fuck more people, please.
Yeah, he had to kind of roll with it.
And did he have the religious background that you had, or was he?
He did not.
Okay.
Yeah, his family was more nominal. They didn't go to church at all. They didn't really indoctrinate their kids at all. He grew up like a Boy Scout. Boy Scout was his religion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very Minnesota thing.
Yes, it is.
He's probably an Eagle Scout too.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Went to college with a few of those. So the idea for him though, had that ever been something that he had thought about, or was this you were blowing his mind with this?
No, I was blowing his mind because I was only his second sexual partner. He hadn't had many relationships before me either. In fact, he hadn't had sex with anyone for 7 years since before I came along. I can't tell his story for him, but he just hasn't, because of his life experiences and who he is, that was just not something that he had the opportunity to do during that time span. So he didn't really have the experience either. And that's kind of what led me to this. I was like, dude, like, I'm super fucked up with this shit, and you've got nothing. Like, you don't have like a ton of sexual experience and knowledge you're bringing into this either. And so we're both just like blind leading the blind here. And that's why I was like, dude, we should open this marriage up. And that's when I read the books, and I said to him, there is a chance that this will culminate in the termination of our relationship. And that's what many of my clients talk about, the fear of what non-monogamy might do to their established relationship. But the position that I took on it is that if that's what happens, I'm okay with it, because that's what needs to happen. Like, why would I be afraid to open a door if it leads to something that is better for both of us, even if we don't go through the same door together? So it was more important to me that we grow as individuals and find out if that's something we want to continue to do together. So it was a risk for sure. But I felt like it was worth it. I felt like I had hit a wall. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And so then it got pretty fun at that point.
How did he react to that?
He's so sweet. I mean, he's just like, it's the way he reacts is more of a visual thing than an audio thing. But if you can just envision him just kind of just sitting very like, all right, I'm just waiting for her to say what she's going to say. Oh, okay. She said that. Okay.
And just like, I'm just going to take that in.
Tentative, like, all right, you said that. Okay. So he was just like, stunned, maybe not turned off to it necessarily. Maybe confused and probably fighting some internal narratives around, his insufficiency or something like that. But I reassured him, like, this isn't about you. None of this has ever been about you. And he knows that, like, that's something he has to probably remind himself of every day, that this isn't about you. And so we're both photographers professionally. And so we decided in December to open up our marriage. And so in January, we took each other out on a date, got all dolled up, and took pictures of each other for our Tinder profiles.
That's awesome.
It was very sweet. It was really sweet. And then we helped each other write our profiles, and like we would be swiping together on the couch and be like, oh, look at this douche, or like, so it was kind of a collaborative like thing
bonding.
That we did. Yeah, it was bonding. Thank you. That's a really good word. Yeah, it was bonding there in the beginning. And he didn't have a lot of luck. I don't know what the listenership would feel like, what the statistics are that they would report, but like, I get the sense that men don't have as much luck finding dates if they're ethically non-monogamous, whereas women, and I'm speaking in binary terms, but don't or do have a lot of success with finding people who are interested in dating them. And so he didn't get like any nibbles, like at all. Whereas I went on a dating binge. I was just so excited to like meet people and learn about myself and kiss people and fuck people and like watch cartoons together. Like that sounded great. And so, I started dating people, and, as someone who has an emotionally complex cognition and like a little bit of type A, a little bit of ADD, a little bit of creative, geniusness mixed in there, I ended up creating a spreadsheet for my dating, like tracking things that were important to me, because I really wanted to keep myself cognitively and emotionally grounded. So like I would track like date 1, date 2, did they touch me? Did they ask like just little things like how did I feel safe with them? Did I feel turned on with them? Did I find them attractive? Did they talk too much? Did they talk over me? Like, these weren't all like specific categories, like, but just generally, I was just trying to stay honest with myself about these interactions and to force myself to reflect on how different personalities and different interactions made me feel so that I could start establishing the boundaries and preferences that I had for interpersonal relationships with romantic potential partners. So it was a little silly, but it was helpful, and it's a fun story. I still have the spreadsheet. It was incredibly helpful. I would encourage anyone who has a similar brain to try doing something like that, if they're on a dating binge. And so
it's a reflection. It's a way to kind of process everything and say like, kind of determine if you're happy doing this too, and
right.
and look back and have. I mean, as someone who loves data too, like I would totally do something like that.
Mindfulness practice, like suited precisely to dating. Like it forces me from like, if I hadn't done that, I imagine I would go home and just like, eat candy all night because I have so much energy around like what I was processing, yet not actively processing. Instead, I would just like soothe myself with candy or like any other thing, TV, anything to distract myself, because out of not having to process what I went through. And so I would just feel the emotion, but not know what the emotion is. And this forced me to reflect and to tell myself yay or nay about certain interactions, and to make really well-informed choices based on honest reflections of how I felt in those scenarios.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious because I feel like we skipped something big in there, which was you told Keith. Keith was like, huh. And then you're on a dating binge, right?
Yeah.
So
they went and took pictures.
They took pictures. Okay, fine. But what were the discussions like of like, was there a discussion like, do we want to do this in a polyamorous fashion? Maybe they're swinging. We could do this together, go to sex clubs. Like, did you two explore different avenues for this? And like, did you come up with some type of like, here's how we're going to do it? And even at that point, you took off like a bat out of hell because of the dissonance and the way the dating apps work. And I mean, he was kind of left at the starting line. So like there was a whole lot of shit happening there. Yeah. And I guess if you could take us briefly through it, I guess we don't know everything that he was thinking, and you probably don't want to speak for him, but the general idea of like what happened to get you from, you brought it up, to taking pictures to dating.
Yeah. I think at the beginning I wondered too. I was like, at the end of the day, am I going to be polyamorous? Like, is that the thing that is that the label that I'm going to feel? Can I feel romantic feelings for more than one person at a time? Or for some unknown reason, I have no idea why, can I only somehow manage to feel romance for one person at a time? That seems random, but could that be a thing? So I didn't, as black and white as my mind really, really wants to be, this was one of few scenarios in my life where I was just like, I guess we're just going to find out. And so I went into it not really knowing what was going to happen. And I would say my entire poly adventure has kind of been like that. Like, I'm already not playing by the book. Like, I'm already having sex outside of my marriage. Like, I already felt like, I don't even have any standard to feel like I'm deviating from at this point. This is all, I'm just winging everything. And so I really didn't know what I was going to be called, I think, or what my label was going to be, or how I identified in that way. And even up till now, I'm not entirely sure of my sexual orientation or even my gender identity. I don't even really know. And I'm kind of okay with that. But
And was Keith okay with that sort of ambiguity in the exploration process?
I think so. We did talk, and it was really important to both of us to just stay communicating. I can't remember the particular details of like the guidelines that we had in the beginning, but they weren't overbearing. It was just kind of like, I'm not going to do anything big unless I tell you beforehand that it's coming, because, at that point in my life, and probably now to an extent, I wasn't the person, and am still probably not the person that's going to just show up and fuck someone. And, that's not a moral judgment or anything. It's just kind of where I'm at. And so I fully anticipated that if something like that was going to happen, there was going to be a build up to it and an opportunity to talk it all out. So I think that's kind of where we stood. It was just like, we just trusted each other to proactively, just stay in communication, constantly being open about what's happening. And it required a lot of empathy to put myself in his shoes and think, which of these steps do you think he's going to kind of want to know about? Like, what is he going to want to be prepared for? And so I think like probably the first date I went on, beforehand, I told Keith, like, I'm not going to fuck him. Like, that's just not going to happen. I said, if the date goes well, there's a chance I'll probably kiss him. And so it's like these conversations we had before of like, I anticipated the limit of probably what I would do. And then I talked to Keith about how that made him feel. Not that what he felt was my guiding light, but that it gave us an opportunity to work that out between the two of us. And so I would say, if this goes well, I'll probably want to kiss this guy. And this is the key phrase, write this down, listeners. Do you have any feelings about that? It's not, is that okay? Fuck, no. Do you have any feelings about that? So then if they have feelings, hey, let's talk about that. Like, I'm still in control of my body. I am still autonomous, but your feelings matter to me. And it matters to me to help, brainstorm and troubleshoot and mitigate those kinds of feelings. So he didn't really have any problem with that. I was more concerned about him than he was. I do remember that now. Now that you're prompting me, I would go home and I'd be like the first time I kissed someone, I was like, oh, I kissed him, and Keith's like, cool. And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, are you sure? So I was freaking out for him, and he was really actually adjusting to it really, really well. I don't really think he has a jealous bone in his body. He just wants to see me well and happy, and still wants to be included in my life. And so the only times that he has reactions to things are when he kind of feels like he's being dismissed or not thought of. So
right. I guess that's really helpful to hear sort of you break that down a little more, because the way you explained it was sort of like, we made this decision and then I was just off, and I went on this day and I was banging this guy and then I was kissing this guy. And it sounds like there was a lot more to it than
there
that.
was.
And,
yeah.
And I appreciate you going into that.
And clarifying that you did communicate with him, and that, I mean, not assuming that, we assumed you did, but just going into the more detail helps. And kind of know.
I think it's really important to talk about the nitty gritty of what that communication looks like. I think on these platforms, when we discuss ethical non-monogamy or interpersonal communication or relationship health, we tend to gloss over the actual, what does that actually fucking mean? You can tell your listeners all day long, treat your partner with empathy and compassion. And they're going to sit at home and be like, I agree philosophically, but what the fuck do you mean? What does that look like in language and grammar and in semantics? So I'm very passionate about helping people find and define that in the language, because it is a lot to just be like, yeah, just be empathetic. Yeah, just talk about your feelings. Use I statements. Okay, I hate you. That's not going to help.
Well, and it's so fascinating that you have come to this place coming from where you started. So, that you were learning all these skills. Did you learn? It sounds like you pulled some of these off pretty early on in the journey. It wasn't 4 years into this or 3 years into this that you're like, and then I realized I needed to ask him what his feelings were. It was pretty early on. And I think that's pretty evolved and advanced, especially coming from the religious foundation that you were dealt.
Yeah. I don't know how to account for myself. This is not, poly has been painful, but it hasn't been hard. And those are weird words. I don't even know if those are the words that I want to use. I've always kind of known what to do. What to do has been hard or painful, but I've always kind of known the boundaries of things. And that's why that's what I end up helping a lot of my clients with, where they get the boundaries of their autonomy blended or mixed up with the autonomy of other people. And they'll try to control or have an investment in someone acting in a particular way that they want them to act. And I think the education that I put myself through regarding non-monogamy and some other topics settled me into the belief that, and I think dealing with the idea of hell helped with this too, that it's helped me become mildly fearless. I have fear, but I'm willing to feel that fear in exchange for pursuing truth. And if the truth is that my relationship is no longer conducive to being expressed how it is right now, where we're living together, we have a contract with the government, and we're sharing our finances. If the truth is that this isn't the most greatest, combination for both of us, I'm willing to deal with the pain of that dissolving, in order to find something that is better suited to me. And that's why I encourage listeners to really focus on emotional intelligence and emotional resilience and regulation in navigating ethical non-monogamy, because we really need to know what belongs to us and what belongs to others. And that's a helpful tip for people who are monogamous or non-monogamous to keep in mind. And that's hard, because we are humans and we project, and we're scared of being hurt. And our culture encourages codependency and thick enmeshment with other people, and getting our identity through the people that we have relationships with. And to move things forward, I think that's what poly, and now I do identify as polyamorous until I don't know. It depends who I'm talking about. Like, am I polyamorous with my romantic, my husband, and then I'm, swinging with these other people? Like, can we have a mix of identities? I think that we can. But for now, I shall say that, I'm polyamorous, and exploring polyamory has helped me, God, how do you even say it? Be me. Like, I don't feel as enmeshed with my husband anymore. And I mean that in the most positive way. We were already doing really, really well, but this has helped us so much to be able to talk about really painful things, with courage. And in addition to that, I think another big thing that poly has given to me was a mirror. And so I'll move along in my story. Basically for me, I just, I ended up dating one guy pretty seriously for a couple of years, and, I learned some stuff there. But the more interesting part of the story is when my husband started dating, because as I said, he didn't have a whole lot of luck at the beginning. But then 6 months into our adventure, we're sitting around a bonfire with our friends, and one of my friends is like swiping on Tinder, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's Keith." She's like, "Wouldn't it be funny if I swipe right on you?" And so then they started dating. So yeah, it all started as this joke, and then they started chatting, and I was watching it like, something's gonna happen here. And Keith's like, I don't know about that. I don't know. And and eventually my friend Kate, she texted me and she's like, "So I met this guy on Tinder." And I was like, "Oh my God, tell me about him." She's like, "Well, I really want to go on a date with him, but I need to talk to his wife first." Now I was like, "Yes, you can date my husband." So it was very sweet. And at this point I'd been with my partner. His nickname when I talk on platforms is Snacks. He likes to be called Snacks. So I had been with him for 6 months already. And so Keith is about to start dating Kate. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm like amping myself up. I'm like, I've had so much fun these last 6 months, and now I got to get amped up because we're about to move into a whole new thing where Keith is going to start fucking people, and I don't know how this is going to go for me. And so like, I'm talking to Keith, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen for me. I don't know if I'm going to be like completely absent of jealousy. I don't know if I'm going to have a huge jealous response, and let's unpack jealousy in a whole different episode. But like, let's just suffice it to say, I don't know what's going to come, but I told him I am here for it. Like, no matter how hard it gets, I promise to be present, to be aware, to own my shit and to show up for conversations about this, no matter how hard it gets. That was the promise I made, and I was able to keep that. Turns out I am very jealous. Turns out, whatever that means, right? I'm very insecure, it turns out. And that's what I meant about the mirror. So Kate is, and I talk about her a lot on the episodes because she gave me a gift by dating my husband, by fucking my husband, which she does regularly. She is the personification of the woman I thought I was supposed to be. I've always felt like I'm not that woman that men want. And I'm mostly straight, I think. But I always felt like, culture is pretty clear on the kind of women that we're supposed to be. Very clear. And they're very clear about what we're supposed to be like in the bedroom. Very clear. I didn't see myself in that story at all. So that's why I marry everyone that fucks me. So, so when Kate comes along, she wears cute dresses. She dyes her hair. She wears makeup. She flirts. She is, everything. She's smaller than me. She's everything I thought that I was supposed to be as a woman. And yay, she's dating my husband. Hooray. So I really had to contend with that. And that probably took me a year and a half of intense work. I was seeing a therapist, a poly-friendly therapist, to work it out. And it was really rough. There was days where I just couldn't even be at home. I had to go and sleep at my partner's house because I had this visceral response in my body to being around my partner, to being around Keith. It was pretty severe. But like I said, I was very committed at the very beginning. I knew that my reaction is not about Keith, and it's not about his dick, and it's not about Kate. It is about me. And our common enemy is culture, and monogamy-centric culture, and the culture that has us possessing bodies. And so that was always right here. This is what I need to focus on. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. That was a tough year and a half. But near the end of that year and a half or so, I almost had an instantaneous revelation. And there was other things that were happening in my life too, to assist this. But one day I kind of realized I don't want to be her. And that was very freeing for me. I looked at her, I looked at other people who I thought I was supposed to be like, and I looked at me, and I decided I liked me better. And that changed everything. Everything. And I have not been the same person ever since. And I got that from being polyamorous. I was able to face my insecurities, which were hidden in a monogamous marriage, and finally able to confront that and to know in the end that I love myself and I like who I am. I like how I show up in the world. I like how I talk. I like my intelligence. I like how I treat people. I like my determination and my fearlessness. And I like how I encourage other people. I like me. And if other people don't want to put their dick in me, that's not my problem. And so Kate was a gift in that way. And that just fucking changed my life. So jealousy, listeners, jealousy can be a teacher. Jealousy is not just jealousy. You're not just a jealous person. I'm a jealous person. I'm not a jealous person. Jealousy is an arrow pointing at something that you can decide whether or not you want to unpack that or not. But I challenge, at least for myself, I felt like unpacking that was a hugely liberating package of love that I didn't even know I didn't have. And I never thought that was going to happen when we took pictures at the theater 3 years before that, or a year and a half before that, this poly adventure was going to lead to me loving myself.
Right. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's super powerful and
so relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess maybe one thing that I did want to ask about, and I'll use your phrasing, but the question is really, how have you seen your relationship with Keith change and grow? And you talked a little bit about the unmeshing, this, and I think it's important for people not to confuse this unmeshing with less love or less, importance to your relationship. But that you said further on that you like being you, and if people don't want to put their dick in you, that's their problem. And I think
I did say that, didn't I?
You did. So you wove some very eloquent things into that monologue. So, but to maybe clarify that it was something that you took away from this, that somebody could want to put their dick in Kate and also in you, and that those two are not mutually exclusive, right? Because I think that's a big thing that people struggle with, and this gets tied into something that we've talked about quite a bit on the show, which is there's really a lose-lose situation. If your partner's dating somebody just like you, then you're like, oh well, she's just like me, then or he's just like me.
You feel a lot of competition,
and then you feel the competition. But if they're like the polar opposite of you, you're like, well, how could they possibly like me and this other person?
Yeah.
And so that's what you got hit in the face with, was Kate is the opposite of me. And again, tying that all back together, like what have you seen with your relationship, both sexual and not, that has really opened your eyes? And
Ooh, so much. I don't think I've ever articulated it, but the way that you phrased the question kind of has provoked this thought that it's going to sound weird coming out at first, so I'll keep developing it. But I think to some extent, I think I was afraid of Keith, in that my narrative was that he is the only one that loves me, that to some extent I felt dependent on him. We weren't super codependent, but like to some extent I felt that, like, this is it. This is the guy. Like, if we're not okay, I'm not okay. Sort of. And finding myself in poly, I don't care. Like, I love the shit out of that man, but I'm just married to him. Like, that's it. Like, my marriage is not my identity anymore. My relationship with him is not my identity anymore. And I think it was for a long time. It was very reassuring to go around and say, my husband this, my husband that. Oh yeah, we never fight. Yeah, we went kayaking the other day. Yeah, we love photography. It's great. And like, and now I feel like I'm Marie, period. I'm Marie, and I have a relationship with Keith. I have a relationship with other partners, and those are people that I allow into my, what's the science word for things? Oh, in my orbit.
Yes.
They're people that I allow into my orbit because I am an autonomous human being, and I can make choices about who I have in my life. And whereas before I felt like I built something with Keith, and that if he were pulled out of it, the Jenga tower would just fall over. And now I feel like I know who I am, and it doesn't matter anymore if he is, like, back to the dick thing. Like, even if he says to me, you know, I love putting my dick in Kate, but I also really love putting my dick in you. Can't you see that now? It's so clear. And I'd be like, oh my God, you're totally right. That's so great. But it doesn't matter. Like, that shit doesn't matter. Anyone who's listening, no, it doesn't matter if anyone says that to you. It's all about us. It's about what we think about us. And going through this process of having to kind of emotionally sever myself from Keith because he was fucking someone else, and to contain some space to find out, like, am I okay? Like, am I okay? Because I don't feel like I should be okay. I don't feel okay. And in that, that's when I found out I am okay. I'm okay as I am, whether he's here, whether he's not, whether this is working anymore or not. I know who I am now. And being non-monogamous has opened that up for me. And so, again, I mean, people might want to call it codependency. They might get away with it. I don't know. It doesn't really feel exactly like that. But I definitely feel a really solid sense of who I am in this world, and that the people that are in my life are around me. They're not a part of me. And then I feel like I'm looking at the world through my eyes and not through a couple's eyes, if that makes sense. And so that's really done a lot of good for his and my relationship. We went to Min Polycon in Minnesota last summer, where I gave a workshop, but we also attended a workshop provided by the folks at Multi-Amory. And they talked about the thing called Radar, which I don't know if you guys have talked about on your show or not, but it's a monthly check-in with your partner. And that's something that Keith and I started last year, and we've been doing for the last 12 months. And it's something we'd never done before. You take this deliberate time every month to talk about the relationship, the state of the relationship, and you work shit out, and you don't take each other for granted anymore. And so, like, our relationship is constantly evolving, and we're both in a position now of of deliberate choice. That's the other thing that I've gotten out of poly, that I don't feel like we're married just because we are. Like, every day, I probably am not exaggerating, but probably every day I ask myself, is this still working for me? With the full knowledge that I can exit at any time. There will be pain, that's for sure, but I can exit, and I will. I've done it before. And so every day feels that much more sacred, meaningful, intentional, fulfilling, loving, because we know what we're doing. We're not just on an escalator together in this marriage. We're not on the relationship escalator, which is a great book I recommend everyone read. But we are intentionally doing this relationship, and we're intentionally supporting each other on our own paths, which may or may not be parallel. But at the end of the day, we come home and sleep in the same bed and raise two fine cats together. So, like, I like our life, and I don't, whether, certain parts of our relationship end, like, I mean, we don't have sex anymore. That's just where our relationship is. And I'm not terribly surprised by it for a multitude of reasons. But that's the beauty of this, that there doesn't need to be a game, what's it called? A deal breaker. That we have honestly acknowledged to ourselves the case. We have discussed why that might be. I have offered what I'm opened to and what my perspective is on things, as he has as well. And we've met and said, it is what it is. And in the meantime, like, that doesn't define our relationship. And so Polly's opened up that for me too, to know that we're all just playing a game of go fish. And just because we don't have a pair that matches anymore doesn't mean we need to throw away the cards. That you can constantly be renegotiating relationships that were built with certain cards in common, and those cards can shift, and that doesn't need to end everything, especially, specifically if you're ethically non-monogamous. Like, it makes things a lot more flexible. And so there's just a lot more openness, a lot more freedom. I feel just solid as fuck with who I am. And as a person in this relationship, I don't feel afraid to make him angry. Not that he has a temper, but like, that's something I carry from my childhood. Don't make the man angry. I don't care if he gets angry now. I don't try to make him angry. I'm not a dick. but like I allow that to be, and I allow people to have their feelings now. And that's another gift from poly. But anyway, I'm still rambling on, and I know we're getting near the end, so I'll taper down.
No, it's fantastic. And I think, it's a super important point that, and this is something that we hear often, is that one of the things that polyamory or non-monogamy gives to people is that ability to realize that not every person in your life can check every box in your life. And that you and Keith obviously have a very deep, meaningful relationship, and it checks however many boxes it checks. And that right now the box it's not checking is the sex box.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that, well, if it's not checking that box, that all the boxes get unchecked and we have to throw them out and start over.
Well, it also doesn't mean that it might not get checked again in the future.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah. And for some people, that is what it might mean. That's the beauty of this, that if you're playing Go Fish and all of a sudden you don't have the sex cards in common anymore, if you look inside yourself and say, but I need to have sex and I need to have it with you, and I don't want to be polyamorous or ethically non-monogamous, then that does mean that you restructure that relationship to just be friends. And that's the important thing, that self-awareness is super key here, to know what you're willing to negotiate and what you're not willing to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think, a lot of the times we hear people talk about this in the context of, I like these kinds of movies and my partner doesn't, so I go watch these movies with this person, and this person likes opera.
Or I like this activity.
I like this person likes opera, and this partner doesn't. But, once you start thinking about it and saying, sex is just another one of those activities. And you could be saying, well, my partners have to fucking like opera or they're out. It's no different than any other activity. So I think I just thank you for sharing all of that and everything you've shared. It's
very cathartic to share. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I have one question that I'm kind of changing topics, but I'm just curious about. Are you out to your family and do they know everything, and how has that gone? I mean,
and your camp counselors.
In a summary, I guess, in a somewhat short summary, in a camp counselors. Yeah.
Yes, my family knows. I told them that November of 2017 that we were polyamorous. At first, Keith and I talked, and we were like, no, we're not going to tell our families. Like, that'd be like emailing them and be like, yeah, I'd like to be spanked, Mom. Like, it just seems like information that they don't need to know. But then as time went on and I fell in love with my partner and he fell in love with his partner, and pretty soon it was a small family. It was a polycule. It was, I think they're called table poly. Is that what it is? Kitchen table poly. We're all very dear friends of each other and very close knit. And I'm just sitting here like, what lie do I need to tell my parents about like my availability for this thing or that thing? Or like, what can I invite them to and what can't I invite them to? And how am I going to have to lie to them there? And I just got to a point of frustration, and it compounded on the fact that I've always felt like I wasn't enough or not approved of because of my lack of Christian faith on top of everything else, because they also know that I'm atheist agnostic. So for me, that was a huge like volcanic eruption in November of that year, to be like, I'm fucking sick of apologizing and hiding my life, whether it's my disinterest in faith and it's my rejection of dating just one person at a time. That's ridiculous. Both things are very, very silly. And if that's the way that they're going to treat me and judge me, then they can fuck off. And so I talked to Keith and I was like, I want to tell my family. And he's like, okay, I'm not telling mine yet. But so I did tell my family. I emailed them. They wrote back, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I've heard worse. I've heard much worse, much, much worse. But my dad was like, yeah, poly used to be really like trendy back in the late 60s, and people are doing it now and they think they're being super trendy, but it was a thing already back then. And there was even a movie about it, but it's really, marriages really thrive when there's trust. And like, he started like telling me what marriage and relationships are and the virtues of them. And that just, whoa, I was not having it. I did not ask for his advice, his information, his input, his take. And the movie that he cited, I looked it up on IMDb, and it's a movie about two couples that cheat on each other and then just end up fucking together, and then everything goes to ruin. And I'm like, okay, so that's not ethical non-monogamy. So I wrote back to them and I was just like, some things that you've said have really ticked me off, and I'm going to need some space. So I took some space, talked to my therapist, did some really good work with visualization stuff to understand that I've always felt like I've hidden my core self from them. And then I became committed. Again, this is another layer of like, I am okay as I am. Against an authority, instead of then like the personification of sexuality. This was now I'm okay against the authority that raised me. And so I went through that process of like, what I am doing in my life is ethical. It is ethical as fuck, and they've got nothing on it. And so I took some time to digest that. I stopped talking to them for probably about a year. Then I contacted them again and wrote them a very long email, kind of a email of like airing of grievances of my entire life, just to let them know what I've experienced up till now. And then we slowly reconnected, and I let them know, like, I expect respect and non-judgment, and I need you to know that I'm being completely ethical and that I'm open to your questions, but you don't get to judge me. And if you do, I have no problem terminating our relationship again. Like, I just don't. I am past this. I'm done with this. And they were both amenable to that. And things have kind of healed up now. And we're all in communication now. And they've met all the partners that I've had. They've met most of them. They loved one of them. They didn't know he was my partner at the time. But yeah, so things are good. They're pretty good now. I think we don't really talk about it very much anymore. But I feel comfortable with it now with my family. All of my friends know, and now clearly, like, this is a platform that I'm on. People like know me as like the poly person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I was just curious because of your upbringing and such. I was where that was at.
And did you tell all the people who were fucking in the woods at camp? I think you deserved it.
One of them lives with me right now. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't talk to most of those people anymore. They're still really fundy Christian. So, but I did have my, my 20th high school reunion was scheduled for October. It's being rescheduled because of COVID, but I was kind of like fantasizing about showing up with my business cards.
Yeah.
Ethical non-monogamy coach. Also, host of a podcast about atheism and agnosticism and doubt and faith. So, because it was a Christian high school. I forgot to mention that part, but yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue to talk about your stuff, like promote yourself.
Oh yeah. Thank you for giving me that space. Yes. So as I mentioned just briefly a moment ago, I host a podcast called Everyone's Autonomous, and it is partially a podcast that tells the stories of people who have left a very fundamentalist form of religion. It's not necessarily anti-religion, but it is anti that kind of religion. And we tell those stories. And then the second half is I'm trying to focus on, there's a lot of podcasts out there that tell stories about people leaving the faith, but there's not a lot of podcasts that fill in that gap of like, okay, you've lost your entire worldview. You've lost your entire paradigm. What the fuck do we do next? And what the fuck is happening on this earth? Because we used to think that this was just a theater that was going to be burned to the ground when we were dead. But turns out this is actually where we live and where we've lived for a very long time. And we're going to continue to live until we destroy ourselves. So the second part of the podcast is a lot about humanism and social justice and like getting educated about what's actually happening in the world. I call it anthrobiological grounding. It's that getting back into your fleshy body and communing with the world as a part of that world. Like, I am a biological creature, just like that tree in my backyard. And so what does that mean about my relationship to nature? What does that mean about my relationship to government? What does that mean about my relationship to policy, to food, all kinds of things? And so I'm trying to help those people who are recovering from a very traumatic worldview reintegrate in a holistic way to what's happening on this planet in a way that can make them productive. I don't like that word so much, but like able to participate in Earth, which is a very difficult thing for that listenership, because they're carrying so much trauma. It's really difficult for them to make that adjustment. So sorry, that was a long exposition about that, but that's the podcast, Everyone's Autonomous. And then additionally, as I've mentioned a few times, I'm doing life coaching for people who are exploring ethical non-monogamy, and people can find that information at Marie D as in dog, elephant.com. I think that's mostly the relevant stuff. I also have a humanitarian photography company called Marquee. It's MARKEI, Marie Keith. Get it? marqueephoto.com. And so I try to integrate everything that I've been talking now about into what I photograph. So like I go to protests in Minneapolis for George Floyd and stuff, and I take pictures and video and provide it for the people there. And that's what I'm talking about, that reintegration into the earth of like participating in social justice. And this might go over the heads of a lot of people who don't understand it, but for the listeners that I'm dealing with, that's something that they can struggle with. So that's the third thing that I do. And I also talk a lot. So I'm sorry if I've gone over, but yeah, those are the three main things that I wanted to plug. And thank you for giving me that space.
Of course. And thank you. And links to all of everything you just mentioned will be in the show notes on our website too.
Awesome.
That is a fact. I think just thank you so much for sharing everything.
I know we have so many more questions. I'm sure we could always go into more, but for the sake of time, we should probably
and who knows, there might be a part 2 someday. And, and
I'm doing an annoying little clap. No one can see it.
So with that, maybe we let you get along with your Minnesota evening. And
so much different than the other states' evenings.
Right.
It's slightly later. It's a lot nicer in terms of the people around you.
The Minnesota nice.
We're very familiar with it.
Are you?
We grew up in the Midwest, so we know it well.
I'm purging that from my system hardcore.
Well, thank you again, Marie. It was wonderful meeting you. Wonderful sharing your story, and we know it will be impactful.
Yes. It was cathartic to share. As I mentioned before, I got more out of this than you did, perhaps. It was really, really, helpful for me to share that.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for that, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, you betcha.
Yeah, sure, you betcha.
And we're back. Thank you so much to Marie for reaching out to us and
for all the work you do.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. And for all the amazing work that you do. We're so excited to share and get the word out about the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Go check out her podcast. You won't regret it. And again, thank you, Marie.
Links to everything she do.
Everything she do in the show notes.
Links to everything that Marie does are in the show notes. normalizingmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast button at the top.
As promised, at the beginning of the show, we told you we were going to tell you more about the virtual meet and greet, which is a way that we have come up with at the beginning of the quarantine to bring people together and create some awesome community. So we bring everybody together who joins in a large Zoom chat. Mm-hmm. And then we use the breakout room feature to send people into littler groups, maybe it's one-on-one or it's a group of 3 or 4. Anyway, we send you off with a question to talk about. You talk about it for a few minutes, and then you come back to the main room. Everybody laughs, makes fun of me, and then we do it again.
Yep.
And so we've been doing them the last few months. They've been growing. We had over 30 people last time.
30 logons.
Yeah, it was like close to 200 people.
Maybe not 200.
Because we have all these poly quads and stuff.
We do have multiple people per logon. It
wasn't really 200 people. I would say 50 people.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a safe estimate.
Anyway, that's what it is. It's super awesome. As Emma mentioned, it's $10 to join. and it's open to anybody.
And you can find more information and sign up by going to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, clicking on the Meet and Greet tab. Separate from that, we also are growing our community on Patreon, and you can sign up at the $2, $5, or $10 levels, and you get different things for those different levels. But we do have a monthly Q&A. The next one will be on October 28th. We do those once a month, where we do an East Coast one and a West Coast one. It's pretty informal question and answer time frame, just a time to discuss and be together.
Yeah, these are amazing. We look forward to them every month. And we just wanted to say a huge, gigantic thank you to everyone in the Patreon community who comes out and who participates in everything that this community has to offer. So thank you for making it what it is. And we hope you'll consider joining, or at least checking it out and seeing if it's for you. The
other things we offer as part of the Patreon are a MeWe chat group and a women's group. So just wanted to plug those as well.
Yeah, again, for us, it's all about the community, and we're super excited to have it out there.
It's incredible. It's amazing to connect with all of these different people, and just, I can't even put it into words.
Well, then we should stop talking and tell people that next week we're coming at them 2 times.
Bonus episode.
Yeah, we've got a Monday episode we're doing with Wilson, who's recently started. Well, not even really recently. He's been exploring it since the beginning of his relationships, but he didn't really know what it was. He was just kind of doing it.
Right.
And then we've got one on Wednesday
with Rachel.
Who's a blogger or a blogger on Medium, and she's started to build some community as well. And again, another fantastic story. So stick around for next week, or we'll see you next week. Come back. You probably don't want to wait here till next week.
Come back and listen next Monday. And
don't forget to reach out and say hello. Tell us what you love, what you don't love, and tell us that you love us, really. Really, we're just looking for affirmation from all of you. So thank you in advance for that, and have a wonderful week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.